Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us this morning, and I've been so looking forward to this plenary. We are thrilled to be the kickoff here for the first in-person gathering ever, and to use this time together to share the voices of professionals just like you, individuals who are passionate about the possibilities of the preschool years and who are bringing their talents, their tricks, their teaching techniques to the education of our youngest learners. So let's start. Over the last year, the PDG Birth to 5 Technical Assistance Center has worked hard to hear from and lift up the voices of early childhood education professionals and family members. And the Administration for Children and Families asked us to create a venue where our stakeholders would have an opportunity to share their experiences with and within early childhood education systems so that we could collect and center the everyday moments, the challenges, the joys that characterize work with children and families, and highlight opportunities for improvement and solutions to challenges that we know professionals and families face. With ACF's guidance and direction, we sent a call out to grantees nationwide. Probably a lot of you in the room got the notice, asking for early childhood professionals who'd be interested in joining our working partner groups. These groups are a series of discussion groups that focus on the experiences of the early education workforce within systems, your program, and in partnership with children and families. We also asked grantees to share this opportunity with the parents, grandparents, foster parents, and kin caregivers they connect with every day to join their own working partner group focused on the issues that arise from seeking access to early education programs and how participation in these programs impacts children and families. So you'll be pleased and maybe not surprised that we received over 300 applications for 50 openings in these two groups. And these were from providers and parents in sites from Alaska to Maine. And today, I'm so excited to give you a glimpse into these conversations. And to join us, we have Richard Gonzalez, Senior Advisor and Preschool Development Grant Birth through 5 Federal Project Manager within the Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families in the Office of Early Childhood Development. Welcome, Richard. Thank you for being up here with me and being my partner in crime.
Thank you so much.
So some of you may have seen the TED Talk from Simon Sinek, where he discusses the power of knowing your why. And he explains that almost every professional can tell you what they do, and some professionals can explain how they do what they do, but few can compellingly articulate why they do what they do. That, like, why do we show up every day? And knowing our why is the reason why some programs and professionals can motivate and inspire and others struggle. So take a moment to reflect. Why are you in this work? What path brought you to early childhood education? We asked professionals from our working partner groups how they came to this field. And what we heard is that often education is a family tradition, as we'll hear in this clip from Cindy Portillo, an early Head Start educator from Schenectady, New York.
So I'm new in the field. However, I feel like I'm not new, if that makes sense, just because I grew up with my mom, who was an early educator. She used to work at a Head Start program, and then so when I would have my school recess, she would take me and my siblings along with her to help support in the classroom per se. But really it was just an opportunity for us to interact with the kids, and I think that's where I first fell in love with working with such a young age group. when I first applied to a private daycare with a group of toddlers. I feel like that's where I instantly found my spark, and I knew that I wanted to work with that specific age group, and that's how I continued, and to this day, still am in love with working with the 2-year-olds.
It's my favorite age too. When we asked professionals, why they chose early childhood education, we heard really powerful reflections about the impact of this work. And then the impact it's had on them as individuals. For owner Lisa Daniel Hollingsworth, the move into early childhood education represented an unexpected evolution of her family's 2-generation business, which was a roller skating rink in Mississippi. And she had never considered working in the early childhood field until a local developer saw an opportunity to repurpose her facility.
In 2003, a local business developer came to us and asked us to open and expand to offer services for preschool age children. And my brother, who is the business person, he was on fire. And I was like, no, I don't know anything about children under 5, except for the one of my own that I currently have. And I just did not feel confident in my knowledge and skill set to serve that population. So we went and had a tour of a couple of facilities. And when I walked in, while my brother is looking at everything from a business perspective and the budget and the financing and advertising and all of those factors, I looked into the eyes of the children. And I thought, I may not have the knowledge and the skill set right now, but I know that I can love these children. And I know in my heart of hearts that that's the first thing that they all need to set them up to be successful in life. And so we embarked on that adventure in 2003 in that facility that we were leasing. We have since built a facility that is twice the size of that one, and our capacity is 200 children, and I could not love what I do on a daily basis anymore.
Victoria Gonzalez, who's a Family and Community Services manager at Claire Swan Early Learning Center. It's an early Head Start program in Anchorage, Alaska. She felt a particular connection to Head Start and early childhood education, partially out of a desire to give back, to be a support to families after having received program services herself.
In my understanding of Head Start, I was a Head Start parent myself, and so I also attended Head Start. So I love the Head Start model. It's something that I really, truly believe works, and I feel so connected to our families that when I really jumped in with both feet, if you will, it was something that really just clicked, kind of like you said. It was a career change that really was heart work in a way. And I know that's kind of cliche to say, but it's so easy to go home at the end of the day and know that I made a difference, right? And that's so satisfactory.
So Richard, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share your why. And what advice would you have for a new professional entering our field?
Well, first of all, I have to tell everyone that I actually got into this field by accident. I was pre-med. I was supposed to go to medical school. And at the time, I applied. I got on a waiting list. I was about 6th on the waiting list, but I had like a D in physics or something, So they said, you got to take this class over again and get it better and then apply again. And I said, oh, I need to take a semester off. I don't want to take physics again. I got a D. Why would I take it again? So I at least need a break. So I went to work in a child care center for the summer. And at the end of the summer, they offered me a chance to be a teacher's aide in the after-school program. And I loved kids, and it was working great. Yeah, this is easy stuff. I could do this. And so I went in, and after a semester, instead of going back to school, I ended up going to Bank Street College for a master's degree. So I just turned direction and ended up staying first as a teacher's aide and then as a teacher. And what was fascinating to me about the first three people you heard from is I could relate to all three of their messages, right? Looking into children's eyes, seeing the joy, seeing the wonder, seeing the excitement they had of new things, new experiences, and knowing I had the opportunity to provide those experiences. So I get just a little hint here. I actually brought in science, and we actually dissected fish and other things that a calf's heart, and we actually did ballet. I had some people say, you can't do ballet with the kindergartners. Sure you can, and we did ballet. So all of these, it excited me to see the excitement in the kids' eyes. And I'll tell you this little story before I pass it back to Rebecca. In our child care center, we were called by our first names plus Mr. or Miss. So I was Mr. Richard. And when it came time to go down for the nap, I would rub the children's back, and I would go into my pocket and bring out magic fairy dust. And I would sprinkle the magic fairy dust on the children to help them to go to sleep. And when I used to train teachers, I used to tell them, I actually had no clue what I was doing. I just wanted the kid to go to sleep, you know? Because if the kids went to sleep, I then had a little bit more freedom of movement, right? So I was, at that point in my development, I didn't understand the importance of what I was doing, but I did it. It worked. Kids loved it, and fine. 10 years later, I'm walking down the street, and this young girl's walking toward me, and she goes, Mr. Richard, it's so good to see you. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's so good to see you. And she goes, you don't know who I am, Mr. Richard, do you? And I said, I have no idea. And so she told me who she was, but this is the shocker. She said to me, Mr. Richard, the person who used to sprinkle magic fairy dust on me to help me go to sleep doesn't remember who I am. And so we joked and laughed, and it was fine, and I went away. But that night, it hit me. If this was the first thing that came to her mind after 10 years, how important was this act? And it reminded me that all the things we do that we don't even know sometimes what we're doing or why we're doing them, all of those actions are being watched by children, being learned by children, are important to children. And so at that point, I was fairly committed to the early childhood field, but I clearly was going forward. And then as for advice for new workers, I would say the most important advice is it's about relationships. It's about staying flexible. It's about listening and observing and responding to what you see and what you hear, remembering that each child is unique and individual, and even the most challenging, difficult child has something that's to be acknowledged and to be celebrated, and we need to do that. And so I'll leave you with the last story. And that some of you probably have heard this 100 times, the starfish story. Anybody here know the starfish story? No, maybe not. Wow. Okay, starfish story. Okay, so there's the man walking on the beach, a young guy walking on the beach, and he's walking and he sees something down by the water and he can't figure out what's going on. So he goes down by the waterside and he looks and he sees there's this other young man and he's picking up starfish and he's tossing it into the ocean. And he looks, and across the entire beach is covered with starfish, as far as you can see in either direction. And he would run, he'd pick up the starfish, he'd run to the edge of the water, and he'd toss it into the ocean. And then he'd come back and he'd pick up another one, toss it into the ocean. And so the young guy comes up and says, what are you doing? And he says, well, look around you. There's starfish as far as you can see. The sun is out. If I don't do something, these starfish are going to die. And he picks up a starfish and he tosses it into the ocean. And the young guy goes, but you're being ridiculous. This is silly. You're one person. Look at all these starfish. You can't possibly make a difference. And the person picks up a starfish, tosses it into the ocean, and turns around and goes, it made a difference for that one. And that is the essence of our story. We feel overwhelmed sometimes with all the responsibility we have. How are we going to help all these children? We need to remember we help one child at a time. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, I love that, because that is the center of our work, is the relationships. And, I think building and sustaining those strong relationships with children and families, it's complicated. It's hard work. We are lifting up the funds of knowledge and the strengths of the children and families we serve. And it's intellectually challenging work, right? My background is early childhood special education. We need to be creative and flexible thinkers in our role. We have to be thinking about how do we individualize our care and our curriculum to meet children's needs. It's also physically and emotionally demanding as well. I mean, just the sheer physicality of lifting children up multiple times a day, day after day, it's no joke. Staying calm, offering nurturance, helping children learn to manage their big emotions, it's quite simply exhausting at times. Finally, we know that shifts in staffing before and after the pandemic have left professionals feeling stressed, overwhelmed, and a lack of support. In fact, recent data from 0 to 3 State of Babies yearbook shows that the top 3 reasons that are cited for difficulty in retaining staff are low wages, a lack of satisfactory benefits, and burnout. And the professionals we spoke to told story after story about the impact of burnout on the careers of both new and experienced professionals. So let's start off. This is Cindy Portillo's thoughts on the challenges that the early childhood education work environment poses for educators.
Really, I feel like one of the biggest challenges of working in this field is burnouts, and in the sense that teachers or classrooms are kept at their maximum ratio, but not being considered of the type of children that are in the classrooms. So, in my current classroom, it's 1 teacher to 4 children, but, if one of them is exhibiting behavior difficulties and the other one has a developmental delay, that really is a lot of work to put on a teacher who is expected to be alone with 2 other children. So just, it's really the burnout in the classroom, the stressors, the feeling of being overwhelmed, also just the simple fact of sometimes not even being able to use the bathroom because of short staff. Really something as simple as that can get difficult. These are just things that I feel are necessary.
Our work also means that we're called on to be emotionally resilient as well. Responding with compassion to children's behaviors and supporting families through some of their hardest times, while often experiencing those same stressors ourselves, can leave professionals feeling depleted. Lisa Daniel Hollingsworth shares more.
And then honestly, when you look at the statistics of how many employees in our labor force in early childhood are also on assistance, whether that be child care certificates to pay for their children's child care, whether that be TANF benefits or, food assistance. And I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but we've just done a survey in the state of Mississippi on child care teachers, and there's an alarming percentage of them who have to seek government assistance to balance their family's budget. And so when you are dealing with the mental and physical stress of this job 8 hours a day, and then you're dealing with the financial burdens and stress that you take home with you, it is just so easy to be burned out.
Many programs are finding that it's increasingly difficult to recruit new staff into programs. And we know that this is a real challenge with a lot of root causes. Victoria Gonzalez from the Anchorage Early Head Start program highlights her program's innovative approach to attracting and training new teachers.
We have done a few things to really tackle some of our turnover rates, right? We have a Training Our First Teachers program, which focuses on bringing in Alaska Native American Indian individuals who are interested in a career in early childhood. And we pay them a stipend to come and get all of their training hours here on site. So they're working directly with our children. They're going through a training curriculum that we've developed to be able to help assist them get their CDA. We also pay for the CDA as just part of our program. And we're really lucky to have that.
Lisa Daniel Hollingsworth closes us out by reflecting on the critical need to professionalize the early childhood education field.
Our teachers have to know that they can invest themselves in early childhood as a career and then one day be able to retire and live comfortably. Just like any other profession where people are compensated for their work, they have benefits, and there's a work-life balance. We have got to give that to early childhood educators. We have also got to change the public perception of early childhood educators. We're not babysitters. We're not daycare workers. We are early childhood educators. We know what we're doing. We know what is best for children. This is our heart and our mission. And the respect and the professionalism has got to come.
I also wanted to lift up the experiences of families in the context of this discussion. Early education professionals are often the first person. They're such an important member of the circle of caregiving adults that are surrounding and supporting young families. Their presence, their consistency, and their support make a huge difference. So Ruth Ann Buckner, she's a first-time parent of a little girl, shares her experience with her home visitor.
The benefits of having that person come week after week are you're building that trust. You know, your child and yourself is building that trust. When there's a new person that comes and there's turnover happening, it disrupts everything that was built. You know, it disrupts the communication. It's now the trust. Now, you know, it makes you more hesitant to want to participate in these programs when the turnover is so high. You know, because you want to just have one person that you connect with and you build on and you grow with. You don't want to have to keep starting that cycle over.
And first-time mom of twin girls, Deidre Wan, really shares how her home visitor was just a really nurturing guide as she learned about and supported her twins' development and navigated the maze of programs and systems in the birth to 5 space.
She's been there since day one. So before the babies came, she kind of like helped me understand, like, you know, what are the good foods to eat, you know, when the babies are inside of you, they'll get this, this, and this. So just like the whole fact of being healthy, learning to keep up with like my exercise, my daily exercises, also what to expect during, you know, labor and delivery. And then as far as like, you know, what mothers go through as far as postpartum, I never knew anything about that. If there's like any type of assistance that I need, like if I needed a car seat, you know, she sent me a link. If there was like if I wasn't able to provide like food on the table, you know, there's like a link. And just now she had sent me like a preschool like enrollment of like places around my area, you know, that will accept him. As a first time mother, you know, just never knew any of these things, and she's guided me through so many challenges and so many worries that she's helped me overcome. But yeah, she's just an angel.
So let's look at the flip side of turnover, retention, or how we hold on to our most highly skilled staff. The professionals we spoke to had a lot to say about the value of retaining experienced staff in the early childhood education field, and they shared strategies, including and beyond compensation, that could support retention. Cindy Portillo begins by reflecting on how it feels to have a passionate and experienced educator in the classroom.
I feel like it's really beneficial to keep and retain the great teachers because it really shows in the quality of care in the children. They are teachers that are there just for the job and the money. And we see a lot of unhappy children that are not, needs are not being met. So in comparison to a teacher that really loves the job and one that doesn't, it's I can't explain it. You can just feel it, and it definitely shows when you're in a classroom.
Child care program owner Angela Bracey, based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, underlines the importance of offering benefits and time outside the classroom to her teaching staff.
I think to retain teachers, I think it's really important to offer some type of benefits. At Seasons, we do offer, time off, PTO time. We also offer planning time. And I feel like all of those times away from the children are vital. They're essential.
And Victoria Gonzalez shares the big changes her Head Start program made to focus on retention.
I think it's so powerful to be able to sit down and go, gosh, what would really entice someone to stay, right? I know when we looked at staff retention and we partnered with our organization that's above us, our parent organization, Cook Inlet Tribal Council, they said, gosh, well, let's look at our benefits and see what else we can offer. And we went from having 2 weeks of paid time off. Actually, I don't even think it was 2 weeks. It was like 40 hours of paid time off to 6.5 weeks of paid leave. That's really powerful. So we were really grateful to be able to explore that new benefit package. I know that we've touched a little bit on like retention bonuses through some of our COVID grants that we received. We have also focused on just mental health, right? So we recently got a grant to redesign our wellness room, and it is currently under construction, but it will have a space for things like food for employees who just need a quick snack. We also looked at adding like mental health kits and tools to our wellness room as well under that new grant. I think that that's really beneficial, right? When we're looking at people and we're seeing them as people who have needs and things that happen, life happens, our staff feel valued and seen, and we see less turnover because of that.
So in our conversations, professionals had a lot to say about the value of the experience and knowledge that we develop on the job. And it's exactly that knowledge that really helps us meet the challenges of the work in effective and supportive ways. Owner Angela Bracey shares a little bit more here based on her own almost 2 decades of experience.
The benefit of having experienced teachers in an early childhood classroom is it makes life better. And it also gives children top-notch opportunities to be involved with an educator who has qualifications to teach that particular child or that particular level that the child is on. I also feel like having the background, the education, the experience in a classroom yields greater outcomes for students.
families feel those benefits. They feel the importance of a stable relationship with a team of professionals in their children's programs. For example, first-time mother of twins, Deidre Yuan, who you met earlier, she's going to discuss the relationship that she formed with her home visitor, which unfolded over time. And she really needed that time to feel safe and secure about having a professional who was a stranger come into her home.
She had did like a couple of Zoom videos first before having to come to our home. And as a first-time mother, you have like all of these, things that come to your mind, as far as, who is she really, especially coming into your home, knowing where you live and where your babies are going to be at for, years to come. So the way she made everything feel so comfortable was doing like a couple of Zoom videos over the phone, getting to know her. Like the third meeting, we did the home visit. So we welcomed her into our home, and she was just the opposite of all of the, the bad thoughts and negativity that I've always thought of. But she is just a delight. She's out of this world.
And Ruth Ann Buckner is going to share some insight on the impact of turnover on communities. And she shares the story of a friend who found that staffing issues in her child's early education program had a catastrophic impact on their family.
One of my friends, she had her child in a child care program, and I guess because of the constant turnovers and everything COVID related, their program had to shut down. So she actually was not able to keep her job. So she now has to live on one income. Luckily, her husband does work and they have that income, but it's still not enough to make ends meet each month. And now she has lost her job because she wasn't able to find childcare, especially in such a short period, to go back to work. So that was an unfortunate situation that they're navigating, but I know many families are facing that today.
The good news is that federal programs can make a huge difference to community-based early childhood systems. And this was never more true than during the COVID-19 pandemic. When we asked professionals about the COVID supports they received and what this additional funding meant to them and the health of their program, here's what we heard from Angela Bracey. Remember, she owns a child care program in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
The COVID funding and support saved my program. That's basically, it was a lifesaver for us. It gave me the opportunity to still pay staff the entire time that we were out of work. And I was able to keep my building up and the bills paid and all the things that I was responsible for during COVID. Even though we wasn't physically working, I was able to meet all of those. So I really am very grateful for all the COVID support that did come through the center, because it really did save us.
So, Richard, we've heard from parents and professionals on the impact of turnover and retention. And from your seat, you kind of have a national perspective on these issues. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about the impacts of turnover on the staff who remain and on children and families? And I'm also wondering if you have thoughts about the key levers that programs might use to impact retention.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I wanted to start, before I answer the question, I wanted to start by telling folks in the room, as I was sitting here and I was listening to this, I was thinking, are people here sitting saying, why are we listening to these people speak to us about things that we probably know already? and I wanted to, you probably figured this out, but I wanted to just say to you that the reason we're starting with this is because this is why we do what we do. And it's an important we felt it was an important reminder to start by listening to the parents and professionals who are talking to us, as you are doing in your states in many cases, because this reminds us all the things that we're going to do next. Now, to the question that was asked, I think first of all, the folks who spoke to us already told us about the impact of turnover is having and burnout is having. We know these are real issues. And so, as many of you know, our Deputy Assistant Secretary, Katie Ham, in the Office of Early Childhood Development at ACF, has been prioritizing the whole idea of workforce supports and mental health supports. And our two departments have been working to develop guidance, to develop resources, to expand the website, to give in fact, the two notices of proposed rulemaking that you're going to hear about on Thursday really speak to many of these issues and how it may be able to assist you in working in these areas. We recognize that many of you are going to talk in the presentations that you're about to hear in those convening sessions that you're going to have. You're going to hear about states that are doing career advancement opportunities or trying to use stipends or bonuses or salary scale pilots, or maybe you're doing apprenticeships. The idea here is that some of you are going to talk about the other kinds of benefits that you're trying to create for staff. So we recognize that the important thing here is to listen to the staff we have in our states, in our centers, in our programs, listen to the parents, and try to respond to those things as best we can. When I was in a program as a director, one of the things I did was I created this, they were called appreciation coupons. Now, I will tell you that I thought this was a silly idea, but one of my staff came up with it, and they said, let's make these coupons. They were just basically a sheet of paper cut into 6 pages. It was a coupon. It had a smiley face on it. It said, I appreciate you, and it had a space where the person could write what they appreciate about. And we made these appreciation coupons available, and we suggested to staff, use this to let other people know that you appreciate them. It took off like wildfire. And people were collecting these appreciation. And when I'd come to visit a center, I had multiple centers that I was responsible for. People would rush me into their room to show how many appreciation coupons they had. And it made me realize that something so simple, we just don't tell people that we appreciate the work that they're doing. And something like that, and you guys have seen studies, you know that salary is absolutely important, and benefits, increased benefits are absolutely important. But if we don't celebrate people and the successes and the things they do, if we let them know that they're appreciated, that goes a long way to helping them feel valued. We think, one of the things we did was I created a appreciation lunch, and at the appreciation lunch we went out. I went out to like Michael's, the store. I don't know, everybody probably doesn't have Michael's, but it's a store like a arts and craftsy store. And you went out, and I found these little medals and things that we could have. And we gave medals for different things, right? Like whatever the work was. And then we gave medals for quiet contribution for people who are making a difference, but in a quiet way. If we couldn't think of a reason to give them a medal, we gave a quiet contribution medal, right? But everybody got something. And again, I was surprised at how much this sort of thing made a difference to people. They talked about this luncheon and these medals, and I'll be honest, at the time I didn't understand it. I didn't think it would be that big a deal, but it was a big deal. The last thing I'll mention is that at the time, I decided to try something. I wanted to try to solve problems, and a lot of times, I don't know if you fall into this trap, but as a manager, as a director of a program, I sometimes think that I have the answers to everything that you might be challenged with. So as people pose problems, other people would say to me, you have to let staff try to find solutions to their own problems. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these $50 grants. So if you need money, you can get a $50 grant, and you can tell us, you can present the problem to us. What is the problem you want to solve, and what do you think the solution is? And then I'm going to give you 6 weeks to pilot your solution. And then you have to come back, though, and you have to report back to everybody how it went. Did it work? Didn't it work? It doesn't matter whether it works. We want to know what you learned. And we did this thing, and again, the example I'm trying to explain is by involving staff and others in solutions, by involving them, helping them understand that they are seen as part of the solution, and that you bring together opportunities for them to talk to one another, this made a big difference. I had a custodian who came up with an idea, who said that he wanted to do, it was like stick ball. It was like, but I forget what it's called when you put it on the tee.
Oh, T-ball.
T-ball.
Yeah.
Okay, T-ball. I guess I should have remembered that, right? T-ball. So he said, we were playing one center against another, parents and children, right? And he said, I'm going to create shirts for all the kids, and I'm going to arrange for transportation from one center to the next so we can bring parents to watch their kids play T-ball. And I said, this is never going to work. This is a terrible idea. But I kept that to myself, and we did it. And parent involvement shot up 250% over the next 6 months, because not only did they do that, but they began to get involved in other ways in the programs. Yeah. And I share that with you only because I think it is all those things we're doing about apprenticeship and career development and salary enhancement, et cetera. But again, it's the relationship. We have to remember to involve people, to listen to them, to include them in the problem solving, give them opportunities to recognize that whatever problem they're experiencing, it's not them alone that's experiencing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just can't wait to tell my husband that I actually answered a sports question. So this is good. So, we know that early childhood education systems are really the keystone of a healthy and thriving community. And so, here we have a video from Angela Bracey, who tells a story that really captures what it means to live in the community where you're working and to support children and families over generations.
My program supports the community by just providing quality care in walking distance. I feel like when a parent who lives down the street can walk down the street and drop off their child and say, like, my kid is fine here, they are thriving, they love coming to school, that makes me feel like we are vital. We're a vital part of the community. We go outside all the time and we talk to the different people in our neighborhood and the different businesses. They know where we're at. So I think it's like a relationship that is extremely vital for our community, but it's extremely rewarding as well. And it's just amazing, like, how the kids remember me. Years and years and years have passed, and they remember me, and they know where I'm at. For the most part, they know where they can find me, and it's just amazing. And just seeing my kids that was kindergartners and they're second grade, they 8th grade now. I got one that's in 11th grade who just comes past the daycare and talk to me, and we talk, and ones that just call me and be like, I want to see you. And we hook up and we get to see each other. So like I said, we go from being teacher, student to being family, like in a matter of time, in a matter of times. But it's very rewarding to see people that the kids are doing well. They're doing very well, that I had a hand in educating.
And Victoria Gonzalez shares what the impact of her program is on their community and what it feels like when there isn't enough capacity to meet community needs.
Over COVID, we lost, I want to say it was 48% of early care options. So over almost half of our early care and quality care just didn't come back in the pandemic. And so for families, they walk into our center and they know that their kids are safe. But also as a community member, I can feel confident referring to our center because I know the level of care that we are able to provide. And I know that the options in the community are limited, and I wish that we could take everyone on our waiting list. I wish that we had endless funds and endless space. We have, I want to say it was 71 when I checked earlier this week on our waiting list. 2/3 of those are income eligible or categorically eligible individuals. I know it's hard for families to be on our waiting list that long.
Yeah. So I am going to, just given time, move forward a little bit. And, I just think...
So right now...
in large and small ways, our programs support the health and well-being of two generations, even if we're not, two-gen programs. Babies and toddlers come with other people. They don't exist on their own. And, professionals are often the first people that families turn to learn about parenting, to learn about child development. And, here, Ruth Ann Buckner reflects on the range of programs that her home visitor connected to her with across her daughter's first 2 years.
There was the WIC program, the Women, Infant, and Children program, which helped tremendously. There was other service related to mental health, especially being a first-time mom. There was the Birth to 3 program. My nurse actually connected me with the Birth to 3 program because we were seeing a little bit of a delay in my daughter speaking. And that helped. She helps me find pediatricians in my area. Yeah, those were just a few of the resources that my nurse helped me navigate and find.
And we know that professionals also work hard to acknowledge and understand families' beliefs and cultures. And the first step is kind of what we're doing here, which is to listen and let parents share their lived experiences, like we hear in this clip from Ruth Ann.
So culture did come up a few times with my home visitor, and just race and ethnicity. And, that was something that was huge for me with my home visitors, because I'm African American, Jamaican is my culture, and I identify as an African American woman. And my home visitor, she identified as a white woman. And when I just started Nurse Family Partnership, this was in the middle of COVID, when there was a whole bunch of race talk and protesting and stuff. And I know that took a huge toll on me. And I had some conversations with my nurse. I'm like, all of this is happening in the world, and it's really, causing me to be very, I don't know. It was really affecting my mental health, though. And we had these conversations, and what really stood out to me was how empathetic she was, and understanding. And even though she was an African American and she's probably never experienced some of the things that we've experienced, she was very sensitive to the subject. She was validating, she listened, and that really helped to build our connection and made me even trust her more.
And, I think most importantly, early childhood educators are there to spark learning and discovery, including nurturing the language that connects children with their culture and history. Victoria Gonzalez is going to share a little bit about the work that her Early Head Start program is doing to nurture language skills in their community.
Family culture, in addition to just community culture, really does play a huge part in our program. It's the way that we interact with families. It's the way that we deliver information, or even gathering of information. Those are really powerful things for families, and relationships are at the core of that. Really start with the culture that we have specifically in our center. So we have a UPIC Immersion program through a language grant here. And that's a really unique opportunity, especially here in this urban community. We really see less and less of those native speakers. So our UPIC Immersion program really helps to bridge that gap from birth to 3 until they can get to our education partners over in elementary school for the UPIC immersion program there. But it really brings in a cultural environment for families. We incorporate it into our family nights. We work really hard to just be respectful and mindful of how, again, our communications might be, messaging to families within that UPIC culture.
So these stories really powerfully illustrate how high-quality early childhood education services contribute to sustained positive outcomes for both children and families. But, what do we really mean when we say high-quality services? Well, we asked professionals in our working partner groups how they would define it, and this is what we heard.
I believe that high-quality early childhood education from birth to 5 has to be focused on the relationship between the primary caregivers and the child, and the primary caregivers and the program and the family. So first, our goal is to build relationships with each child that develop their trust and their safety, and they know they're loved and they're going to be taken care of while they're here.
I would say high quality education and early care really is about that home to school connection. Through Head Start, we know that the parent really is their first and best teacher. And to acknowledge that, we have to be able to buy those parents and caregivers in to the educational experience. We're increasing the parent's ability to advocate for their child, not just now here in early Head Start or Head Start from 3 to 5, right? We're really even looking like kindergarten through 12th grade. And what a valuable component for families to feel empowered to be able to advocate for their child and themselves too.
I think high quality child care education or early childhood education, it means that all the children succeed. Now, every child might succeed in a different way, different avenues, different roads to success. But if we have all the resources inside of the building or in reach, we're able to make sure each child that comes through that door is successful.
So, Richard, I'm interested in your reflections. You've heard from our professionals and parents and our working partner groups this morning. And do you have any final thoughts?
So the first thought I had was this was our attempt to have a touchy-feely session with all of you. And to remind us that when, working at the federal level, working at the state level, we often get removed from these kinds of messaging, these kinds of interactions. But as you're going to each of the sessions today and the next 2.5 days, I'd like you to think about the voices that you heard, the messages that you heard, and think about the work that you do that makes a difference for each of these parents and providers in your states, in your communities. Especially when the bureaucracy is making you crazy to the point where you want to scream or pull your hair out. And you remember that it's really why we do this is for these parents, for these children. The reality is, at the federal government, and I think you do the same thing, but at the federal government, we see our job is to remove the barriers that you face. What are the challenges you have doing the work that you're trying to do? And as you tell us about those challenges, our job is to try to help figure out a policy change or guidance information or other things we can do to remove those things that get in the way of you doing what it is you're trying to do. And I think at the state level, you're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to listen to what's going on in your communities and trying to create policies and opportunities for your programs and your providers and your parents to benefit in ways that they need to move forward. So for the next 2.5 days, while you're going into your sessions, you're going to be hearing from folks from our TA network, not just from the PDG TA Center, but from our Workforce Center, from our Quality a child care quality center, from a state capacity building center, and other centers, from a Department of Health OSEP training centers, et cetera. So you'll hear from folks at HRSA. You'll hear from folks, you may hear from folks even in others departments. So we know that as you're working in your state departments and you're collaborating with one another, you're reaching out to all of those different departments and all those different parts of your community. Who's not sitting at the table with you? Because ultimately, it is our synergistic efforts, our working together, that's going to make a difference for the family. So when I listen to these messages, there were some things that cause us to say, okay, what can I do about what I've heard? Is there something I'm already doing about this? Or are there other things we can go back and think about? And so, again, as you go into your sessions, most of these sessions now are going to be very focused on solving a problem, looking at strategies, and listening to you share with one another and ask questions of one another. So thank you, Rebecca, for this opportunity to hear from the voices that remind us why we do the work we do. So thank you all. Also, we appreciate your attention, and good luck for the rest of the conference. Reminder that we're now going to take a 30-minute break. Unfortunately, the only way to get upstairs is through those elevators. So this might take a little while, so not everybody has to rush at the same time. When you go up to the next level, please join your groups. And remember, you have a lunch break of 90 minutes, and then we're going to have other concurrent sessions afterwards. See you later. Enjoy your day.